how easy it is to use. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Take a Stand live event. This is a 4-day live event where I'm going to be interviewing incredible women who all have a story of triumph over trauma. So there's been something that has happened in their life that has been quite challenging, and they have learned to navigate their way out of it. So if you are watching on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I know, I feel like I'm selling my soul, but you have to do this thing, otherwise people just don't do it. Click the notification bell and give us a thumbs up. But more importantly, if you're listening to the conversation between myself and Kim, and you think, actually, I've got a friend who could really do with hearing Kim's message, what it is that she has to say, please do share this video on. There is no reason why people should be suffering in silence. So please share, just send a link, pass it on, and people will be able to reach out to Kim if that is appropriate for them. So Kim, it's lovely that you have joined us for this live event.
Well, hello, Wendy, and thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. It's so important work.
You're very welcome. So, yeah, it's a challenging topic, and I would love to see more conversations being held in the social media space that address these types of issues, because they're very common and yet people aren't talking about them.
It's almost like an STI, sexually transmitted infection, right, for people. So
yeah. So let's get straight into it then. Can you share a story, a snippet, without getting into the finer details, of a story of triumph over trauma that you are happy to share?
Well, and this is a story that I haven't shared in such a public forum. It's one, I guess, that I felt a lot of shame around, but I thought it is such an important topic. And as you said, these subjects we don't discuss, we keep them hidden. Now, I was a lawyer at the time this happened, and I ended up dating a man because I didn't want to get back with my ex. I knew that would be complete disaster. I met them all. I saw both of them, met this fellow for the first time at a cabaret, and my ex was there, and he was looking really good. And this fellow was there, and he was interested in me, and I thought, oh, he'll be the safer bet. And in reality, he was just a different form of trouble. And so it was, I got together with him. I didn't have any great, oh yeah, he's the one. But you know how you can kind of slide into things? And I'm going to move, I'm not going to go chronologically because I think it's kind of boring. I'm going to skip around. When I knew there was a significant problem, we dated for about a year, and I ended the relationship, and he didn't want to give up. He kept reaching out to me. Now, I went to my parents' farm one weekend because I just needed to get back in touch with me, which was fine. And when I came back, there goes my voice. But when I came back to the city, I stopped at my office, and I worked at the time in a 10-story building downtown in the city of 200,000 people where I lived. And I parked my car out front, and I went upstairs to do some work, right? Because I'm a baby lawyer, lots of work. And I was there a couple hours. And just before I left, I walked around the office, make sure I had the coffee pot off, make sure I turned off all the lights. I came back to my office, and the message light was flashing on my phone. And I'm like, oh, a client has an emergency. So I picked it up and listened to the message. It was this man. He didn't live near downtown, but he knew I was at my office, and my heart plummeted. And this utmost fear, like I remember getting out of there as soon as I could, looking out the front door of the office, is he there? And getting in my car and going home, completely freaked out. I had no idea what was going on. If memory serves, that was late January, and this fellow kept trying to reach out, and my anxiety kept ratcheting up. And we got to Valentine's Day, and in the afternoon, the receptionist phones me, "Hey, Kim, there's a package here for you." So I go to reception, and there's a package that more than 25 years later, I can still picture that package. There was no card. So there was no way to tell who it was from unless I opened it. My instincts told me it was from this man who still wanted to be part of my life. And and everybody in the office knew I was freaked out because I wasn't keeping it quiet. And some of the women were like, "Oh, Kim, it's a gift. You should keep it, right? Just open it and keep it. What's the harm?" And my gut was like, "I'm not opening this." And I asked the receptionist, I said, "Where did it come from? Who delivered it?" And the company that delivered it, they were clients of the office. And I had done work for the owner. And this was in the days before privacy issues. I phoned up the owner, and I didn't ask who it was from. I asked where his staff picked up this package. And they picked it up from this man's workplace, right? He looked into it for me. And then I was really, really full of anxiety, because when you've told somebody the relationship's over, you don't expect an anonymous gift any more than you expect them to be out of their physical locale. I mean, he never went downtown on Sundays the whole year we were together. And these weird, weird things started happening. So one of my coworkers and I, after work, I was so freaked out, we went to the police. And we got the right officer. Because when I shared this fellow's name, he said, "Oh, just a minute, I'll just go run his name through the computer." And when he came back, he was very solemn. And he said, "I'm going to tell you things that you can never tell anybody I've said." What he shared was complaints from a previous girlfriend that were the potential, and I mean, it's 25 years later. I don't remember this guy's name. But I mean, she had ended up with paint thinner in her vodka bottle, mysteriously. The tires on her car had been slashed. Those were just the two big examples that this police officer shared. They didn't know if it was this man, but of course, that's the most likely suspect in these kind of situations. So he actually said, "Here's what you need to do." He said, you want him gone from your life? Here's what you need to do. When he phones, because it isn't if, when he phones, you don't even say hello. You just recognize his voice. You hang up. Okay. And he said, do you know that he has keys to your house? So you need to get the locks changed right away. And know he has a key to your car. Does he know where your car is? Oh, yeah. Then hide your car. Do you have some of his possessions? Oh, yeah. You need to give them all back. You need to give back all the gifts he has ever given you. And this guy had given me a Tag Heuer watch for Christmas. I didn't want it. But, like some of these women in the office who were open the gift, they're like, you got to keep the watch, Kim. And I'm like, I'm not keeping that watch. That watch is just bad news. No. And I mean, I remember he had his bicycle in my basement and all of these things. And he actually promised, he said, you need to take back all this stuff and tell him it's over. And he also said, does he have some of your things? Well, he had my favorite sweatshirt from law school. He had pajamas my mom had made for me. There were some of my favorite CDs. So there were things there that I really, really loved. He said, forget about them. You need to cut all ties. Do not ask him for them back. That'll just give him a hook to be in contact with you. He said, do you have a friend who can go with you? And so we planned it all to have a friend take back his stuff where I could go into his apartment and say, listen, and have the conversation. The police officer arranged for other police officers to meet us there, right? Like he was that concerned. Now, the good thing for me was I knew a person who owned a locksmith shop. So I phoned, explained what was going on. There was somebody there immediately to change the locks to the house. I had a friend who was dating a woman who lived on a farm very close to that city. A friend, former mentor. Guess where my car went? And this friend and I then, made arrangements to go see this fellow, loaded up all of his stuff in her car, and away we went. There were no police officers there with us. They had been called to more important tasks. So in we went. And I had to face this man and say we were done. I was so scared, right? Incredibly scared. Gave him back all his stuff. My heart was full of pain about what I had to walk away from of mine that he had. But I did it. And then we celebrated. It was way, way tough. And by celebrate, I ended up, I don't know. Do you know what a potluck is?
No.
Okay, so in the prairies of Canada, where I live still, a potluck is a communal meal where everyone brings a dish. And then we all share them. And I hosted a potluck for my support team. So the receptionist was there and her partner, my mentor who arranged to hide my car, the owner of the locksmith shop and his family, and the employee who changed the locks, the friend who went to the police station with me, and my housemate, the friend who went to his apartment with me, right? It was this kind of support gathering within a week of me telling this guy we were done. Now, the fun part of it was my coworker who went to the police station with me had always, for a long time, had referred to this man as a weenie. Like a wiener, right? Like she just never liked him. And so at the potluck, I had bought some smoked sausages, like wieners, and we didn't have a fireplace, but I lit a candle and I stuck a fork into one of these sausages and I roasted it over the candle flame. I roasted the weenie to celebrate being free. And that, right? Like it was one of the best parties I've ever hosted. Like there was just lots of love, but it was part of this cleansing. And it was interesting. This fellow, he never phoned until my housemate, who was male, was away 1 week. And then one morning at 7:00, the phone rang. Right? This was a couple months later. Phone rang, and it's this guy. Right? So I did what the officer said. I just hung up. And I ended up, it wasn't done out of fear, but I ended up moving to another city. It was my dream job that wasn't as a lawyer came up, and I applied and was the successful candidate. So I moved. And even so, a year later, I was at a training event with people who I'd never met before. And they're, hey, you're friends with, and they mentioned this guy's name. Hey, we know you're friends with. A year later, he was still keeping tabs. He was keeping tabs on what I was doing and trying to get hooks into me. So it was an interesting, and I think I've always felt shame, Wendy, about all of it, and responsible. Because for me to end up realizing, oh, this guy was a stalker, and looking back, I remember him, buying me lingerie and making a comment, something like, well, I hope it fits, you're so large. Right? There were these denigrating comments every now and again. And looking back, how the really fun things we do would be with his friends and not with mine. So that was a trauma event that I don't talk about. Like I'll mention it one-on-one, but not in as much detail as I've shared here. And it's interesting. There's been lots of trauma events in my life, but this one has really, I guess, helped with my work that I do today. Because I gave up law so I could really help families who are going through conflict, significant conflict. And most often that's as a divorce mediator. But there are women who are in relationships that need help getting out. And so I'll work as a consultant and help them. But I think the experience helped me recognize, but more importantly, to have empathy. Right? I can't judge.
Yeah.
And it isn't where you expect to find it.
No, this is very true. It's very true. It's it's alarming, isn't it, that the police were not giving you the full picture, but were giving you enough information to protect yourself, which means whatever information they had on him was quite significant for them to be worried to such a degree to tell you to take all those steps, because that's quite unusual for.
I was so lucky.
Quite unusual, yeah.
Right? To have that officer.
Yeah,
And
very lucky.
I think the other thing that can happen to people in that situation, to women in that situation, is you expect the system is going to help.
Yeah.
That you're going to be protected.
Yeah.
And that's not, the system is not very efficient at helping women in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Something just popped into my mind. Come back. It's just popped in and then shot back out again. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is that, emotional abuse is very subtle.
Oh.
And it's so subtle that it can be very hard for you to explain it to somebody else, for them to understand the severity of the emotional abuse. And I think sometimes that's where the shame comes in, because it's very, you can feel it, but actually putting it into words and having somebody understand the impact that is so unique to you is quite difficult to translate, to speak about, to talk about, to get across.
When he made the statement about, oh, you're so large or whatever, he was playing on my fears.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can that be abuse, right? That's part of the problem with it.
Yeah. 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 And I, for me, in my own experience, it's been the emotional abuse that has been the most damaging, because it's been the hardest to explain. Other people understand other types of abuse very easy.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things there are some things that people just don't get and actually don't even see as being abuse.
Well, and what's interesting, have you done any of the reading on adverse childhood experiences?
Yeah, I used to work with young people at risk in social services for 20 years. So, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, well, because there's a direct correlation between attempted suicide and emotional abuse and emotional neglect. And yet, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I think really keeps people stuck is focusing on he's a narcissist. Because it's not solution focused. It puts you in the mindset
Shifts
of
the blame
victim.
too much for me.
Yeah. But you're a victim, and it's hard to take action. It really doesn't matter if he's a narcissist. You need to get out. You don't need a label.
Nope.
You need it, and it's taking those steps. And one of the things I'll have clients do is I created this batshit crazy game. I'm from the farm, Wendy, and still retain a lot of that earthiness. But batshit crazy game is when this person says something to you that you're going, huh? To kind of step outside yourself and go, okay, if this was somebody, if I was overhearing this, batshit crazy scale, 1 is it's not batshit crazy or very, very little. And 10 is, wow, is this ever batshit crazy? Where would it be?
Nice, like it.
Right? So there's some humor to it.
Yeah.
Much like the roasting the weenie. I still encourage people. So, just roast the weenie.
Oh, I'm a big believer in humor. A big believer.
Well, we either laugh or we cry. And you know, I haven't, that man is still the only person I have blocked on Facebook. Right? That's the profound impact. But I don't act like I'm scared. And I haven't really, except for a few blips, I never did. And it's to get women to follow their instincts, right? Like I had a client and her ex-husband was showing up in the oddest places where she was. Well, she found a tracking device on her car.
Oops.
It's following, but
Wow.
right, it's following your instincts. They're there for a reason. This doesn't make any, whoa. Because the brain will lie, but the body, those instincts will carry us through. And I think,
yeah, I like that. I like that the brain will lie, but you'll feel it.
And we don't live in a society that encourages that checking in. But it's the checking in that
the opposite. The
I
opposite.
know.
Yeah.
It's and that actually, like the one thing that hurts my heart a lot in this area is women have suffered the trauma of these kind of experiences. And they go to the system expecting help. And I don't say justice system because I don't see it as a justice system. And that may be radical for somebody with 2 legal degrees, because after my divorce, reclaiming me was getting my master's in law. But it is, where was I? It's not a justice system. And it is, you go to the system and expecting help and you're re-victimized.
Yeah.
And the family courts too. Like there was a case in Ontario in February, which I think is brilliant. This woman was in an abusive relationship for about 20 years. They'd split up, I think, in 2016. They ended up going to trial. She self-represented. She was not represented by a lawyer. An 11-day trial she did on her own. And she brought a claim for damages for family violence. And the judge, there was over $300,000 equity in the family home that was being sold. The judge awarded her damages in the amount of $150,000 to be paid out of the equity in the family home for family violence, a tort of family violence. Now, a lawyer could not make that argument because, that isn't an existing claim. That could be seen as frivolous and vexatious. I can't do it. But she was just a woman who said, this isn't right. And she made the argument and was successful at trial. Which is like, it says a lot about the system, and it says a lot about that we as women have to take our power.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's why I called the event "Take a Stand," because it's not so much about taking a stand against everybody else. It's about taking a stand for yourself, putting you first, about you taking a stand.
Well, and that was me deciding to listen to that police officer and do everything he said.
Yeah.
I took a stand for me. I became more important than stuff. Because, of course, when we hold on to the stuff and worry about it, it's a hook. And stuff can always be replaced.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you were looking backwards, what is a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Well, if I'm not really interested in somebody, don't do it. And that's the first one. And the second one is, if somebody makes that kind of two-edged, I bought this lingerie for you because I thought you'd look good in it, but I'm not sure it would fit statement, that's time for the boot. Because that's a red flag. Because nobody should talk to another person that way.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of advice I'd give is, like, it's going to be okay. Just follow your instincts, right? Like, because going to the police and not opening that present, that was definitely following my instincts, right? Those would be the big things.
Mm.
And I think one other piece of advice is, it's okay not to get over, you're not going to get over trauma immediately. It's not a light switch.
Yeah.
And life gets better. Like, it's uncomfortable.
Yes, life does get better.
You have to face it.
It absolutely gets better. And
you have to take a stand.
And it isn't something. Yeah, you do absolutely do have to take a stand. But there's been a lot of conversation about, the resistance to change, and the trauma is very skilled, and it does it so well, pushes you into this uncertainty and resistance to change, to actually, stepping forward and, like you did, go to the police and actually decide to do something about it, to trust your instinct, to do something about it. Whereas trauma will close you down. You'll know that something isn't right, but you won't necessarily do anything about it because there's too much internal conflict, resistance that is playing out in your own mind or your body, which is its nature, which is what it's really good at. It's good at trying to keep you safe, but at the same time, it can become emotional torture.
Yeah, and it's
about moving through that, and as you said, trusting your instinct to move through it.
And it's been remarkable working with some of these women, and some of them are still in the thick of it, right? They've got young children, but they're much more accepting. And like one of them said, Kim, you helped me connect to the love I thought was gone. And I think the thing is, when you completely reject this person you've loved, you're also turning on you, which also makes it really, really difficult to take action. But if you can acknowledge those feelings, the positive feelings that you once had, you're more, I don't know why, that's, I'm just a lawyer by training, by experience, although I don't do it anymore. But that's just an insight I've had. So.
Kim, thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated that you've joined us, and it's fascinating to hear another story of triumph over trauma, another take, another story that we haven't thought about before. And I think it shows the subtlety of the ongoing emotional abuse and the impact that can have long term for people if they're not able to recognize it or do something about it.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, Wendy. It feels good.
Oh no, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to finish off before I close down?
I think, just it can get better. And don't expect to be able to take a stand immediately. Little things are taking a stand.
Yeah.
Even playing the batshit crazy game is taking a stand. And celebrate those wins, because that will make a difference. And that's it.
Good note to end on, I think. What I'll do is I will pop Kim's information below. So, if you know someone who's in a situation that is similar, please do share this video with them. That will really, really help them to understand the complexity of the situation it is that they find themselves in. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Wendy.